Alrighty, put the cookies away and get into it. Hey everybody, Steve here, the retired hobby tech guy, and today we're going to be talking about some interesting stuff. Retired in Korea. Yes, I am retired in Korea. The wife and I, we sold everything lock, stock, and barrel. Everything including all the stuff in the kitchen junk drawer. Showed up with a couple of suitcases and boom, we have retired here in Korea. We're enjoying it. We haven't regretted it. Living our best life now as retirees and being able to retire early and getting more of those golden years. So with that being said, we're going to talk about being retired in Korea and doing business in Korea. Please be above board. The last thing that you want to do is do business in Korea and get jammed up for being ignorant of the law, or even worse, willfully disobeying the law and breaking the law. Okay, so this is kind of interesting. A little bit of the backstory that we got going on here. Let me get a swig, and while I take my drink, you can hit the like and subscribe button. That will help. So now that you've hit the like and subscribe button, you will be aware of future videos, and we can drive on with this little 2 cents. My little things that I see over my years of being in Korea. Now I've got a total of 15 years in Korea. We've been retired here for 2.5 years currently. We got apartment, car, banks, phone service, the whole 9 yards. We are living on the economy, and we're retirees, so we don't work. Yeah, we're done. So really, I have no dog in this hunt other than being concerned for people that are ignorant of the law. So that's the main thing here. Now, I might get a little sarcastic, and I might, poke the bear a little bit, and but still, the whole reason behind this originally, and we're going to go over a Facebook post and some conversations that occurred. The whole reason that I posted a reply to this is because somebody was doing something that might get them hemmed up here in Korea, and I just wanted to give them a warning and say, hey, check with your lawyer to see if this is kosher. For those of you who are not Jewish, kosher just means it's good to go in military speak. With that being said, another background is that we live close to a military base, which is Camp Humphreys, Korea, the largest overseas military base in the world for the United States anyway. And you've got a lot of family members, soldiers, contractors, and a lot of these people come to Korea and they are under the Status of Forces Agreement, or the SOFA Agreement. It's an agreement between the United States and Korea, and what type of visa that these people hold, and there are certain things that you can and can't do with this type of visa. The visa we're talking about is an A3 visa, and when it comes to business, A3 visa holders, soldiers, majority of family members, contractors, their family members, anybody who's under that is the majority of visas. I would probably say about 98%, maybe even more, are A3 visa holders. They are not allowed to do business with Korean nationals. It is against the law. It is against the law, immigration law, and the visa that they have. So if you're an A3 visa holder and you're doing business and you're, whatever it is that you're doing, could be that you're just ignorant to the law. And so we need to stop that, because if you could get deported, and that would be bad, especially if you're on a long-term visa or whatever it is, and you're not paying Korean taxes. There's some other charges that could come into play, and we're going to take a look at some of those. But the whole thing behind this is check with a lawyer to make sure that you're above board. And if you are, good to go. You are good to go. Rely on your lawyer and, drive on with your bad self with whatever business you have. But if you are a military service member and you hold an A3 visa, you can only do business with other A3 visa holders, and that's the way it is. Now, there comes some complications, and we'll get into this a little bit later on, but let's get into the mix of this. And we're going to jump right in here to, the Camp Humphrey Support Group, because this is originally where this was posted, and Dayon Davenport. This was put out on 3 June. It's 5 June now. And pay close attention to the wording here. Very close attention. This is kind of like Blue's Clues. Focus and see what is being talked about here, and more importantly, what is not being said. says community board for military families running small businesses. So military families running small businesses. Is there any indication about visa status or what types of visas? No, doesn't say that. It says we've set up a large cork board in our office for military families running small businesses to post their business cards or small flyers. Again, is there anything of saying, this only applies to certain types of visas? No, it doesn't. And the other thing that we see is what we don't see is Koreans, you cannot do business with A3 visa holders or military family members for the most part, because the majority of them are A3 business holders, visa holders. We get a comment from Dina. Thank you. I'm an expat thinking about starting a business. Great info. Thanks. You are welcome. It is very important to stay above board. And if you're doing a business, if you do everything legally, then you have absolutely nothing to worry about and drive on and make a life for yourself here. But this is problematic because there was a number of things that I saw that I was concerned with, like in the comment here. It's all for military families running small businesses. And they said it again, for military families running small businesses to post their business cards and flyers. Now, another important thing here is this picture, because this is the place of business. This is off post. This is not on the military base. This is on the Korean economy, and they have a board where you could put your business up there. They got their business up there, which is absolutely cool. I don't know what it is. We could probably check that out, but I mean, good on them for having a business here in Korea. I wonder what their visa status is with that. Are they military service members themselves? Are they under an A3 visa? Are they under other visas? Things like that. It just, important information. The comment says our office is located right in front of the Royal Hotel, often visited by newly arrived U.S. service members and their families in Korea. The Royal Hotel, yes, people visit that. It kind of gives the implication that many people see there or go to their business. They just opened. So I don't know. But yeah, people go to the Royal Hotel, family members and stuff like that. If you'd like to promote your small business, there it is. Feel free to bring 2 business cards, flyer smaller than letter size to post on the board. And again, what do we see and what don't we see? Do we see anything saying that it is only for A3 visa holders that can only do business with other A3 visa holders? Is there any disclaimer saying, hey, by the way, Korean nationals, you cannot do business with A3 visa holders because that's against immigration laws for the A3 visa holders? No, we don't see that. It says, we hope this becomes a space where we can support one another and grow together. Addresses in the pic of the name card. And I'm all for promoting business. Actually, I am a huge business person. I'm retired military. I had side businesses when I was in the military. After I retired from the military, after 20 some odd years, and then I worked for the state of Colorado. I did side businesses, teaching, firearms, other businesses and stuff. Did real estate investing, did home rehabs, did redo kitchens, bathrooms, tile, painting, drywall, the whole 9 yards. I did all that stuff. And yeah, so I know a little bit about business. I did my own taxes for my businesses. So there's that. And that's, of course, after consulting lawyers and finding out that I was doing everything right. So just pay once, learn how to do it, and then do it yourself. I mean, that's the type of person I am. So anyway, the problem is that there's no disclaimer up on this board. Notice it says, need a car, found a place to live, blah, blah, translating, need new glasses, a translator, or just someone to help anytime you need anything. So it seems to me like they're trying to do first-timers, people who come to Korea for the first time. And again, that makes me wonder what type of visas they have. Are they A3 visa holders, or what is their visa and stuff like that? And if we zoom in here, it says own the studio, music practice rooms, recording studio, YouTube podcast studio, video editing services, concert event productions. Okay, so that's what the business does, which is great. If you're if you're doing that and people are paying for that service, I mean, absolutely, I can see why they want to promote their business and helping other businesses. But there's a problem because you're in Korea, and depending on who uses this board to promote business or use business could make them liable to some way, shape, or form. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump into comments because the comments are fun. Again, I'm going to be a little sarcastic, a little funny, but the whole initial thing behind this when I posted my comment was to be concerned and make sure that they did everything above board. This isn't even me. Just to be clear, your off-base location wants small business owners off-base to post cards for their business that is in violation of their A3 visa. See, I wasn't even the first one to comment on this, but apparently I'm the bad guy because I posted the laws. Dayon Davenport ends up seeing and says, Ik myon A, myon B. Okay, anonymous number, 202. This board is intended for military family members who are legally operating small business or side hustles while residing in Korea. Okay, here's the deal. If you're an A3 visa holder, family member, military member, the majority of people that are at Camp Humphreys are A3 visa holders. Hands down, that's a fact. But what he goes on and he kind of reiterates that this is for family members who basically is implying that they have A3 visas. As a military spouse myself and a Korean citizen, I can operate my business in full compliance with local laws and visa regulations. Okay, so yeah, but then there's some problems, and we'll get back to that. Not all military service spouses and U.S. citizens are covered under the SOFA status agreement. There are many types of valid visas, such as F4 and others that permit business activities or self-employment under Korean law. That part is actually true, but the number of those F4 visas or the F6 visas, and there's maybe a couple others, it really pales in comparison to the A3 visas. Again, I would probably say the A3 visas is probably, if I had to take a guess, would be probably about 98, 99%. And then the other ones would be retirees, maybe like myself or my wife who has an F4 visa, which the F4 visa allows you to do business in Korea. But again, the stipulation is that if you do business with somebody who's an A3 business and you frequent their business, that can get that person in the A or the F4 visa in trouble. They could both, it's not quite cut and dried as he says. Therefore, it's misleading and inappropriate to assume that all business activity by military spouses is illegal. No, we're not assuming that at all. But the thing is, you need to take into the context that the A3 visas are the majority, and you did not differentiate any of this in your original post. And he's had a number of days to do that. Additionally, small-scale self-employment or income-generating activities can be perfectly legal depending on one's visa status and adherence to the Korean law. Again, he's just kind of throwing out the exact same thing in a different way, and that's true, but the majority of people are A3 visa holders that cannot do business with Korean nationals. So the whole thing is like, well, is there a possible liability, or could you be complicit in illegal business activities or promoting illegal business activities? We fully support those who are striving for a bit of independence and income within the boundaries of what is lawful. Yep, same here. This board is not an endorsement of illegal business activity, but rather a small community effort to support those who are navigating the life abroad legally and responsibly. While many people have different perspectives, we ask that all dialogue remains respectful and based on facts. Thank you for understanding. And my question about the A3 holders, not F4. And it wasn't disrespectful, but a legit question for you as the original poster. I do not want to see people get in trouble for posting about their side business because an advertisement board gets looked at by the authorities. But you can take the comment how you like. Enjoy the rest of your evening and good luck with your board. And again, this is late at night. Mr. Davenport says, I never mentioned anything about A3 visas. That he you look up here, he doesn't say anything about A3 visa holders. And then he even confirms that I've never said anything about A3. I'm totally fine. Just stating the facts. It seems you might want to have taken some offense at some point. Anyway, good night. No, I think Mr. Davenport is reading into this what he wants. And unfortunately, when people are concerned and bring something up, a lot of people get immediately offended by things like that. So anyway, that kind of goes on. Then this person says, I don't think it is meant for A3. Plenty of spouses are having other visas as F and E and legally to work on economic businesses. Yeah, but again, the point is that those visas are significantly, massively smaller than the A3 business holders. And again, what are the majority of visa holders for military and their family members, which was posted right here? Says it twice. Military families running small businesses. Military families running small businesses. Blah, blah, blah. If you'd like to promote your small business. Again, it doesn't differentiate between any of that whatsoever. So, yeah, and that's where I kind of put in. It says, yeah, the amount of those visas pale in comparison to the A3 visa holders. If you check, it says nothing about visas, which says community board, blah. Here's where I got into it. So here's, and again, I'm coming in and saying that, so you're saying that you're doing this for the small minority of people who have F4 or non-A3 visas, and in my opinion, putting yourself in a bad position. In other words, this could be misconstrued, and you might want to check it. I don't know. If some A3 visa holder conducts business with Korean citizens via your community board, it violates a number of Korean laws. Now, the question is, by you having a community board and promoting unauthorized business, the A3 visa holders, would you be complicit to some degree? Let's see. And this is where I started getting into the Korean law. Article 18.3 says prohibits anyone from employing a foreigner who does not have the right to work or arranging such employment for profit. Okay, while promoting might not be direct employment, if the promotion is part of a system that enables the foreigner's unauthorized business, it could be seen as arranging or facilitating illegal employment or business activities. So just in light of that right there, I would want to contact a lawyer. I would have taken down this post and say, whoa, okay, let's put a pin on this. We'll circle back. You know, that's kind of what the politicians ends up saying. We'll take this post down. I'll consult with the lawyer to see what's going on and to make sure that we're above board. If there's nothing to worry about and the lawyer says you're good to go, don't worry, then you're good to go. And, you know, that's who you rely on is the lawyer of whom you paid. The other one that comes down is Article 32, aiding and abetting. If the foreigner's unauthorized business activity constitutes a crime, significant tax evasion, fraud, operating an illegal business type, which would be the case, a Korean citizen who assists or facilitates this crime through promotion could be charged as an aider and abetter. This requires that the principal offense, the foreigner's illegal business, is indeed a criminal act. So again, depending on the business that you're allowing to be advertised on your community board, which is located off post, that is not an official USFK building, and you didn't put any disclaimers, just, I don't know. For me, I would say, hold the horses, let's just think about this. An unauthorized business is almost certainly not registered for Korean taxes and not paying them. Again, that's kind of a thing. If the Korean citizen is solely involved in the business operation, receives a share of the profit, or helps conceal income, they could be liable for tax evasion or aiding in tax evasion under the Tax Offenses Punishment Act. You know, the more you dig into this, the more you see there are problems. Now, if there was just one statute that said, yeah, promotion might be a problem, and I found nothing else, and this isn't an all-inclusive test. I didn't go over the entire Korean statute for business. This is the immediate stuff that jumped out on me. Maybe there's more, maybe there's not. I don't know. But the amount that I found is concerning. So yeah, promoting could be seen as part of this scheme. A Korean citizen promoting an unlicensed, unauthorized business could, depending on their level of involvement, be seen as participating in the illegal operation. Now, so with that, be very careful. Notice it says, be very careful. Be very careful. Who you allow to be on your community business board. If someone gets in trouble for doing unauthorized business in Korea, they could turn you in for your involvement or ignorance of the law. I would highly advise you check with a Korean lawyer on this before you jump all in with this U.S.-Korea Community Board business board that is off post and not on an official USFK building. So let's see what Mr. Davenport ends up saying. This is kind of interesting. He says, I'm not breaking any laws by putting my board in my own office. People can decide for themselves whether they're allowed to promote their work or not. I'm just offering space, not handing out business licenses. I appreciate your concern, but I can handle it. Apparently, the laws that I posted are of no concern to Mr. Davenport here, and he can handle it. You know, I've seen a lot of people get in trouble in Korea who said the same thing. Don't worry, I got it. I can handle it. And they couldn't because the one time out of 1,000, it bit them in the ass. So anyway, now notice this. This is really interesting because the time that he put this and did this reply to my comments, I kind of noted that. So in the 11 minutes since I posted my comment at almost 12 a.m., in other words, midnight, you contacted a Korean lawyer and just spoke with him. I highly doubt that, but if you did you ask about the codes I posted? By the way, I never said you were handing out licenses, and people will, again, this is what people do when they're caught in a rock and a hard place, or they're caught in a place where they're not telling the truth and they're kind of up against a wall. They're going to throw out things, straw man arguments. In other words, they're going to throw something out there and say, well, I wasn't handing out any business licenses, as if that makes it all right. And it's like, first of all, I never said you were passing out business licenses. I've just said be very careful on who you promote on your community board. A3 visa holders with Korean nationals, a disclaimer on your board would, go a long way as for you to be in the clear and not be liable, and therefore you say, hey, I have no liability here because on my board it says A3 visa holders cannot do business with Korean nationals, and throw that whole thing in there. But, F4 visa holders and F6 visa holders can, with Korean nationals. Put that disclaimer and you should be good to go, okay? Because then you're not promoting, you're already putting out this disclaimer that should remove some liability. But if you willfully know that there's illegal, illicit business activity and you leave those up there, it depends on how the prosecution, looks at that. It really depends. So anyway, he says, it's not my job to make you trust me. You might want to focus on your own business. Peace. It's not about trust, and that's what I ended up saying. As for minding my own business, I don't have a business for obvious reasons, but let me remind you, you were the one who posted this on social media and allowed comments, so don't get upset, especially when my intent was to help. Like I said, I've seen a lot of people in Korea who have got jammed up in Korea because of the activities they did, because they were ignorant of the law and they didn't check with a lawyer. And like I said, it's almost midnight. You're telling me that as soon as you got off and read my comment, you contacted your lawyer and finger banged your phone and, hey, I'm wondering, is this good to go? And did you really just talk with him? I highly doubt it. It's possible, but I highly doubt it. It just smells wrong. As for the trust comment, it has nothing to do with trust, rather looking out for your safety and bringing up things that you might not have considered. So forgive me for being concerned. With that, I hope the best for you. And again, that was made with all sincerity because of the things that I've seen in Korea. And I've seen people start businesses on the economy, and I've seen business fail. I've seen shops open up. I've seen shops close. I've seen families get torn apart because the business failed here in Korea. I've seen a lot of stuff, and it's getting worse over time because of the hard economic times that we're going through. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't have a lot of discretionary money, and so there is a shrinkage of businesses here in Korea. I don't know if you've noticed it out in the Ville or the surrounding areas, or even in Pyeongtaek, or different cities, even Asan, Technical Valley, where the apartment buildings like EG the One and stuff like that. There's a lot of restaurant and office space and business spaces that are imdae. In other words, they're for rent, and nobody is renting those places because people are clutching onto their purse strings and they're not going into discretionary spending, so they're not spending as much money into businesses. So yeah, I really hope that Mr. Davenport does good. Leo Mom says, Steve Wilson, all you said is true and fact. That's what I try to do. I'm not infallible, but I try to pass on information that would be helpful so that people can succeed. And this is another one. Miss Boston here. She's a firecracker. Respectfully, please shut the F up. Like, what are the odds of that happening on social media? You're literally talking to a Korean citizen. No, it doesn't really matter. That's kind of saying that because somebody is a citizen of that country, they have all knowledge of all the business laws and all the tax laws here in Korea. If that was the case, Korean citizens wouldn't need lawyers because they knew everything. This is a straw man argument. This is another thing where it's an appeal to authority of saying, well, if you're not a Korean, you don't know what you're talking about. That's not the case. I don't have to be a Korean to know Korean law. And there's a lot of Koreans that don't know business law. They don't know taxes. They don't know the double taxation or the whole thing that deals with SOFA agreement, A3 visa holders that are not allowed to do business with Korean nationals. Matter of fact, a lot of Koreans don't even know that. So that logic, that dog don't hunt. I'm sorry, Miss Boston. I don't know if your sugar is low or if you need a different different pre-workout, but how are you contributing to the community by trying to discredit and discourage this business? Let's dissect this. Talks about this. First of all, blood sugar and pre-workout. Those are ad hominem attacks, in other words, personal attacks, because they don't have any facts of their own. It's kind of a thing is saying, what if my blood sugar wasn't low? What if I didn't work out and I don't go to the gym? What if I was in a wheelchair? Would that give my facts and the things that I presented, the Korean laws and the statutes, would that now have more credence? No. Facts are facts. They stand alone regardless of whether I go to the gym or not, or whether, it's just disingenuous to try to think that holds any crazy. Anyway, we'll go on. But how are you contributing to the community by trying to discredit and discourage this business? Okay, let's break this into two parts. First, how are you contributing to the community? Well, the reason how I'm contributing is that I'm giving factual information about the Korean laws that talk about how to do business. Okay, that was interesting. We got some work being done here. But I'm contributing to the community by posting these things and saying, hey, you might want to check with a lawyer on this. Put some disclaimers on your board, whatever it is. There's enough Korean laws where there might be some liability where you could be complicit if things go south. So check with a lawyer. And yeah, that's contributing to the community of business owners that are here in Korea or at Camp Humphreys or whatever by telling them to stay above board and to check things out with the lawyer. If you're on post at Camp Humphreys, go to the legal office and they can fully explain the A3 and doing business. There's home business building workshops, and they tell you the legalities of doing business in Korea as an A3 visa business holder. But I digress. That's how I'm helping the community, by bringing up things where people could get jammed up. Now, this person, Miss Boston, apparently thinks that because I brought up these Korean laws, and even just the indication of saying, you just might want to check with a lawyer, she perceives that as me trying to discredit and discourage this business. Where's the proof of me discrediting and discouraging this business because I didn't even know what his business was, this Mr. Davenport person. It wasn't until we just did this live video and we saw that it has to do with like a recording studio and YouTube podcast, whatever. That's like, oh, that's kind of like old because everybody does it now. And with, green screen stuff, you can replace, I just, but it's, some people use it, do recording studio. That is a totally viable business. And there's a lot of people that I bet would be looking for a place like that so they could make music, get professional tracks done, and the whole 9 yards. I think that is an absolutely great idea because I've never seen that in Korea for the people at Camp Humphreys. So could be a valuable service, and I would probably recommend it for those people that are doing that type of thing. I sing like a cat in a bucket. It doesn't work. I'm not a karaoke person or any way, shape, or form. I don't sing. I just kind of move my head and I lip sync. I'm kind of like Milli Vanilli. That's about it. Do the lip sync thing. But yeah, I'm not discouraging the business at all. And so let's drive on with that because we've disproved all of these things up here. I think it's great what they're doing, and I can't wait to get in there in November. Okay, great. I agree. Have a good time just so I can support this business and others. So here they're trying to establish some moral dominance of saying, well, I am going to support this business and others, so I have a level of morality that is higher than you because I put out a straw man argument of saying that you're discrediting and discouraging while I am supporting this and other businesses. That is a very elementary logical fallacy of a straw man argument, and that apparently Ms. Boston has never taken debate classes or looked up logical fallacies. You're the type of person to report a business if it doesn't benefit you, so you're who they need to be very careful about. Mind the business that pays you. This is so wrong because the first thing I would say is, where's your proof? And there is none. So this is so devoid of facts and proof that it's almost like a waste of time. But being retired, I have time, so I figured I'd just kind of go into this. But yeah, I don't report businesses unless it is endangering people and I have explicit knowledge that that business is doing illegal activities. It's kind of like if you knew that there were drug dealers and you were in the United States and you knew that they were dealing drugs out of the house next to you. If you didn't report that, you would be complicit. That would be a bad thing. We're not talking about that. I don't care what their business is. I actually think the music studio and recording studio is a great idea. Never seen that anywhere for U.S. service members. So, rock on with that. That is an incredible service that they're offering. But the problem is not that. The problem is not them offering a podcast room or music room or whatever it is that they end up doing. There's a lot of businesses that I don't benefit from. I don't know, women's clothes store, appliance stores. I don't really use those. That's not my department. That's, there's a ton of places that I don't benefit from, and that's fine. I just don't go there, so I don't really care what they do, but they serve other people, so I kind of support that, even if I don't benefit from it. So again, a lot of straw man arguments, and then the whole thing is saying, be very careful about Steve because he will turn you in. He's a rat. You might want to look up the laws in Korea about defamation. Yeah, because this right here, if you post something like this, and I could actually file a Korean police report and shows that you impinged or damaged my reputation by publishing false things with zero proof, you could get jammed up for defamation. And in Korea, that's a thing. That actually is a thing. And so be very careful about that. Now, am I going to do it? Absolutely not. Because Miss Boston here just doesn't have any proof, doesn't have any facts. I don't really care. I don't have a business. Again, when I read this, I'm just kind of like laughing, and it's, I'm not losing any sleep over this. But it's just, these are the things that people do when they don't have facts and they have this misperception about being offended for somebody else, that she's trying to stand up for, I don't know, maybe their friends or whatever it is, I don't know. But as me being concerned and showing the Korean laws, apparently I'm the bad guy. And so a lot of straw man arguments going back and forth, and none of them are there. Then we see Leo Mom says, Miss Boston, he is not wrong at all. Military family cannot advertise their business off base. I don't know. You might want to check into that. You do business on Camp Humphreys. They have the class that you take before you do business on Camp Humphreys, and I'm sure that's kind of one of the areas that they talk about. So I kind of responded to Miss Boston and said, thanks for the ad hominem attacks, very mature. Again, just concerned that this person might want to consult a lawyer about this. Not discouraging the business at all. Encourage business. Might want to cover your bases in light of the Korean laws I referenced, but I guess that means nothing to you. Then I talk about I have 15 years. I'm not a person who would report a business if it didn't benefit me, which would be the majority of businesses off post, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. Just make that clear. And again, I reiterate how I talk about how I've seen soldiers, family members, Koreans that work on post and off post actually end up getting in trouble by not knowing the laws and being ignorant of the Korean laws. And especially if you're doing business and you're allowed to do business in Korea, you really need to take the time to get smart on the laws in Korea. And they're not the same in the United States. It's kind of like the rights of you as a U.S. citizen. Most people think that they have the exact same rights here in Korea. To some degree you do, but how they allow you to do those rights, and there are limitations on those rights, and there are different laws. You have the freedom of speech, but look under the defamation laws here in Korea, and you'll see that you're not free to spread lies. I don't know. It's just a thing. Anyway, I said, I hope you have a great day. Added, just because, and I go over kind of the logical fallacy of, just because one's a citizen and stuff like that. Facts stand on their own. I'm 100% for Korean businesses. My concern is to be above board. Everyone benefits. Also, telling someone to shut the F up on social media, good luck with that. When has that ever worked? Ditto. Okay, so you just totally agreed with everything I said. Okay, maybe she got that. Leo Mom says we absolutely don't want what happened in 2022 happened again now after everything has calmed down. Exactly, you might want to remind people about what happened. There was some scuttlebutt about businesses and doing business on post, and it was a whole big thing. Anyway, and then I put just to clarify some things. I did a video where I talked about this. Emma May says, would you be comfortable by putting a little card next to the board to share it's intended for those who have visas that allows for this? The laws are tricky, and the majority of spouses on post are only allowed to sell to other SOFA members, which is absolutely true. A little please be mindful note would show great support and care for the community that you're wanting to give. You obviously don't have to, but it may give a helpful pause for thought. Many spouses don't know they are in violation of their visa when they do stuff like this, and Koreans the same as well. Korean citizens don't know about the A3 visa and that they cannot do business with A3 visa holders, and people have gotten in trouble for that. Koreans have gotten in trouble for that. So as doing a business in Korea, you have a responsibility to the military and their families and contractors and everybody that works there. And then you also have the responsibility, because you live and have a business in Korea, to be and helpful, and so that the Korean citizens don't get jammed up. So it's twofold there. So whatever they choose to do is on their own business. And again, with that, by putting that disclaimer on the board, you would have you could say, hey, well, I posted this, so that limits or absolves me from the liability because they did that on their own. It's kind of like, you can tell people to not touch the hot stove and as many times as you want, but if they touch it, and that's on them. So you gave the warning, it's in there on print, you're good to go. There it is. And then Dayan Davenport says, good idea, thank you. Yes, disclaimer and a note like that would be great. And then Cough Hacksniff 101, I love that name, says, if you're here on an A3 visa, I would recommend caution posting anything business-wise on this board. Doing so will invite scrutiny whether you're in compliance with the law or not. Original posters might mean well, but that doesn't matter. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. That's the old saying there. So, a lot of stuff that we need to take into consideration when we're talking about Korean laws and we're talking about doing business in Korea. And again, Davenport, when we go back to all this and look at the very top, let's just go back and just kind of do a quick review, kind of a quick once over on what they posted. Says Community Board for Military Families Running Small Businesses. Again, even after all of this, and even after Mr. Davenport says, right, that's an absolutely good thing, he doesn't go back and adjust this post. If that was me, I'd be changing this and editing this comment to put that on there, and I would put a disclaimer of said note of A3 visa holders cannot do business with Korean nationals. Korean nationals can't do business holders with A3. Be sure to ask so neither of those people or groups of people get in trouble. Other than that, you're free to post your business here on our community board. I would be on that like white on rice. I would be eating that up all day, and I would be making a change to this. But the interesting thing is that you can say all you want, but if you don't have any actions, you didn't really mean it. And so the part where it was down here, where it ends up saying, where did he end up saying? Down at the bottom, good idea, thank you. Is he really think that's a good idea? If it was really such a good idea, Mr. Davenport would amend his original post, and he would show a picture of that statement or little disclaimer up on his board, and that way this would be proof excuse me, if something did happen, he could go back to this post and show and say, hey, well, I have a disclaimer in the post here that I ended up, Community Board for Military Families Running Small Businesses, disclaimer, big, huge letters. A3 visa holders cannot do business with Korean nationals, and Korean nationals cannot do business with A3 visa holders of military family members. Be sure to check on what visa these family members have, and pretty much you're not liable for that after that. You should be I would say probably about 99.999% you would be absolved of any liability because of that statement. But the fact is that if something bad happens and Davenport here ends up saying, and he doesn't change this, and he doesn't change what's on his board, and somebody gets jammed up, they can use that as proof to show that, he didn't do anything, and despite somebody putting out the Korean laws and the statutes to check with the lawyer, he didn't. That could show that he has some liability in this issue. Again, I'm not a Korean lawyer, I'm not a Korean citizen, but that does not mean that I'm not smart on these things, because the whole thing is that as a person, you need to read and study and find out about these things. Just because I'm not a Korean doesn't mean that I don't know about Korean laws when it talks about labor and businesses and so on and so forth. So there was a time when I did not know and I was ignorant about visa systems here in Korea. But because I retired here under visa system here in Korea, and I got knee deep into it because I'm looking at F4, F1 visas, I'm looking at F5 visas, the F513 visa, the F6 visa. When Korean nationals, when they hit 65, they can get dual citizenship. We have a Korean immigration lawyer who gives us good up-to-date information. So again, I make the effort to become knowledgeable on these areas that the majority of Koreans don't even know about. So that's a whole red herring thing. It's an argument that, oh, you're not a Korean citizen. It's not about being a Korean citizen or an American citizen. It's about being an educated person in the area of the things that we're talking about. So that's kind of what we got going on here. So just some really interesting things that we see here, and people need to be careful when they do business. And the thing here with this Mr. Davenport guy, I wish him all the success in the world. And he says that he is a what does he end up saying? He said he's a, what did he say? Didn't he say he was a spouse or a Korean citizen? But if we take a look at what he was talking about, it's like, is he a Korean citizen? I don't know. Let me see if I can find that comment again. It's intended for as a military spouse myself and a Korean citizen. So he says right here, as a military spouse myself and a Korean citizen. So, Mr. Davenport's a Korean citizen? You're a Korean citizen there, guy? Korean citizen. Now, it's possible, it is entirely possible that he is a Korean citizen. It is. There are people of other nationalities, but if you look at the road to citizenship here in Korea, there are some big things that you got to do. First of all, you have to have a number of years, and I think it's about 5 years, if I'm not mistaken, of being a permanent resident in Korea. And then after that, you have to take a test for basically, it's like a GED test. You have to read, write, speak, understand Korean, know their history. There's a written test, a verbal test, the whole 9 yards, listening test, all of that come into play. And then, you have to have been here like 5 or 7 years. So all of those things come into play to become a Korean citizen, and then you renounce your citizenship. So with him being a military spouse, and saying, well, I'm a military spouse, and interesting. I don't know. It's so your spouse is an American citizen, and you're the Korean. I don't know. It seems odd. I mean, there's the possibility of that being true, but also what we can end up seeing is, let's just take a look at his page here. When he talks about, there it is. Got his phone number. And he's been on here since December 25th, 2024. So that tells me, if that means that that's when he started his business, or here, he joined the Camp Humphrey support group. He doesn't have 5 years in Korea, so I'm not sure how he could be a Korean citizen yet. There's a possibility that if you back up 5 years and he came to Korea and lived in Korea as a permanent resident with an appropriate visa and did the time and then took the test and language and all of that stuff, he could apply for citizenship, and that's entirely possible. So, yeah, we don't know for sure. But this is first time in Korea, one-stop support services for foreigners living in or moving to Korea. Car and house search services, car search assistance free, room hunting is free, which we receive commission from sellers or real estate agents. I don't know, you just go one of the 30 or 40 real estate offices that are off post that speak English and that are actually Koreans. Translation and interpretation services, what do they end up having? General document translation. Now this makes me wonder, are they a certified translator? Because in Korea, this is a really interesting thing. When you say that you're a professional translator, and there it ends up saying, for legal, medical, technical, no government submissions or notarization. Do you have the certification for that as a Korean business? Because there's a whole certification. Any business that you do in Korea, you have to get a certification for, and especially when it comes down to translation. That's why you don't see a lot of translation offices, because the certification is really stringent. And so it's possible, but I would just kind of like, general document translation. It has basic documents, contracts, notices, etc. For legal, medical, and technical content, I would be very careful with that. Phone interpretation, real-time phone interpreter, on-site interpretation, 50,000 won per hour. Interpreter accompanies you within Pyeongtaek. Travel fees may apply. I don't know. It's that's a business, that's a thing. But the more I look into this, it's I don't know. I don't know. I can't say one way or another because I haven't used the business, so we just have to leave it at that. What I do know is in regards to the Korean laws, when we're talking about business and promoting businesses, or maybe seen as being promoting businesses that are not authorized to do business with Korean nationals, again, all I'm asking is just check with a lawyer, that with a Korean lawyer. And I just, like I said, I highly doubt it. At around midnight, he called a lawyer to show him my post on social media and ask, is this true? But notice he never brings it up again. Maybe I should leave that. Hey, what should I poke the bear? No, I'm not going to poke the bear. I'm not going to poke the bear. But yeah, it's very, very problematic. And the fact that people get so offended when anybody brings any information that they deem is biased against them, that is automatically deemed offensive, is not that way. And unfortunately, we see this in a lot of younger people and younger generations. Will automatically go this route instead of looking and saying, hey, here are a number of laws that somebody who's been in Korea for over 15 years, and we might want to check into it. If you have a Korean lawyer and you've got your certification to do business and you're allowed to do business in Korea, I don't know why this would be a big thing. But I know I'm about 99% sure you didn't call your lawyer at midnight to ask about this. But and that's fine. I get it. In the heat of the moment, we say things that we don't mean, and I've been there, done that. Being retired and older, I don't do that stuff anymore because it's too tiring to try to keep track of all of that stuff, and it's just so much easier just to tell the truth. This whole thing could have been avoided by saying, you know what, I'm going to take this into consideration, and I'm going to contact my lawyer, and I'll post and let you know what the results are. But it didn't go that way, And even in his own thing, where somebody else and other people brought it up, hey, put a disclaimer up there. Why, thank you, yeah. And we still don't see that. It just it looks like a duck, it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck. I don't know. You fill in the rest. But yeah, I definitely don't want to see people get hemmed up here in Korea for doing something that they're ignorant of, or because they perceived it as an offense, and again, they break the law, which could put their visa in jeopardy. Living in Korea is great. That's why I make these videos. That's why I kind of encourage people, about overseas retirement. One, it's cheaper. Two, there's less crime. You can retire early. But with that, there's the responsibility of knowing the laws of the country that you're in. And this is even twofold when you become a business owner here in Korea. And yeah, because now you have a responsibility by him doing that business for military family members and visa holders, which he never dictates, and all of that, and Korean nationals. Now he has double the responsibility to make sure that nobody gets screwed, and he has the proper disclaimers so that he is not held liable in any way, shape, or form, or at least beyond a reasonable doubt. So So while I kind of poke some fun at this, this is the part where it gets serious. You need to get smart. If you're in Korea, if you're in a foreign country, if you're retired anywhere overseas, you need to get smart on visa laws. You need to get smart on how they do their medical, how to do their taxes, how to do payments, how to do all of these things. And especially if you're doing a business, that is huge, because the way things Koreans do here can be much different than the way they do them in the United States. And people ask about this stuff, and it's like, well, how come, aren't you concerned that you don't have the rights of freedom of speech and this and that like you do in the United States? No, because I've read the laws, and I know, and I'm comfortable with the fact that I do have the freedom of speech within certain guidelines within the Korean law, and I'm totally fine with that. But I also know that there are some restrictions and things I can't do, like make accusations without proof, because that would be defamation. And if I filed a police report for somebody that did that against me, that boom, it goes to court. And that could be very problematic. But let's go into the bonus round. Let's talk about that because this is going to be very interesting. So, for those of you who don't know, there's this guy, Johnny Somali. He came to Korea, and what he ended up doing was basically being a nuisance streamer. He broke a lot of Korean laws, disrupted businesses, misdemeanors and things like that. But then he ended up getting into deepfake videos, which is a big crime. There is a max penalty of like 10 and a half years for a charge for that. So he's not doing well. So with that, let's take a look, and I want to show you some stuff. Boom! I'll kind of adjust the camera here and show you what we're talking about here. So for those of you who don't know, this is comes from Legal Mindset. He is a streamer and he is a lawyer. He's not a Korean lawyer, but with that, it ends up that he is following the case of Johnny Somali, as a lot of people, and myself included, and he has found a lot of information about the Korean criminal process for dummies or special people, as he put in this graphic. Check him out. He's got a lot of good information. And what he does is actually get in contact with Korean lawyers to find out how things are done in Korea. So yeah, it's very different here in Korea versus the United States. Let me move me over just a little bit more. So we're going to take a look at this, and let's say, for example, somebody ends up saying, some bad things about me with no proof. It's defamation of character. It damages my reputation as an individual, maybe amongst my family members and the people that I know here in Korea. I am well within the bounds of the law to file a defamation criminal complaint or complaint. So we go up here and it says find all information on the defendant, passport info, date of birth, location, etc., the basic information that police would usually use in or obtain when a complaint is filed in the United States. And then it goes from there, must be properly formatted, a criminal complaint. In other words, you can't just file a complaint and not have it be attached to Korean law. It has to be, this is the information, here's the law that was broken or supposedly broken or, whatever it is. And then they run on with that, and that goes to the next step. Down here, it talks about the police investigation typically lasts 2 to 4 months, which is generally so. Maybe it takes a little bit less. It depends on the area that you're in and how busy they are and stuff like that. But it could be 2 to 4 months. And the reason that it takes so long is because they are very, very, they're very particular and they're very detailed oriented in how they do this, because if they're going to spend time on it, they're going to cross the T's and dot the I's. It says police conduct interviews of the defendant, and if there's witnesses, police receive evidence. Burden usually is on the victim to provide. So in the case, let's say somebody defamed me. What I could end up doing, what the person did on the Facebook post, because it's posted here in Korea. Koreans have access to that, military family members. It's available to the public, anybody that has a phone or a computer. Since that person defamed me in such a way that everybody can see it, I can screenshot that, make a video recording, do a screenshot of that, and show that as proof of saying this person defamed me by saying things that were not true. And we'll just use that for an example, just to have fun with this. Then what they'll end up doing, they'll do interviews with the defendant. So they would get in contact with the person, say whoever it was in Camp Humphreys that made that statement about me, whatever her name was. And then the witnesses, of course, they might contact other people that were frequented that post on Facebook. But really, if you made the comment and there's a screenshot and there's a video, it's pretty much you did what you did. The police receive the evidence. The burden is usually on the victim. The police decide whether to drop the case or refer it to the prosecutor with a recommendation for indictment. So if there is enough evidence proving that somebody defamed me, that could be passed on and saying, well, what does the law say? What is the minimal or what are the aggravating circumstances on this? Does this break said law that the victim is complaining about and filing this complaint? If it does, then it goes to the prosecutor. Up here in the prosecutor, it says that lasts 2 to 4 months, and prosecutors are tougher than the police. Cases rarely get dropped. The prosecution conducts a tougher interview with the defendant and everybody involved. Prosecutor will try to aggravate the crimes. In other words, they're not just going to glance over it. Whenever it gets from the police investigation to the prosecutors, there's a real good indication that that is a solid case to begin with. Once the prosecutor and their investigation team gets in there and actually does their investigation, 2 or 4 months, could be shorter, could be longer, depending on the number of charges or cases or the complexity of crimes being committed. It's there. With that being said, it goes to the next step. Now, when it goes from the prosecutor and they've finished their 2 to 4 month investigation, and again, by the way, you can get a travel ban and not the defendant, the person who wronged me, would not be able to leave Korea. There's a possibility of that happening, and that's what we see with Johnny Somali, and there's actually other people that have been banned from travel as well. Seen it with military family members that got in trouble for doing nefarious things off post. So anyway, the interesting thing is that when you get to the point of the prosecutors and their investigation, once they finish that up, the percentage of convictions with those cases, when they say it goes from the prosecutor and it goes to the judge, is 98% conviction rate. They are thorough. They are detailed. They cross the T's, dot the I's, do the things with the T-good meal, pupe, and all those things, in the Korean language. It's like a 98% conviction rate. So when it gets to the prosecutor and it passes that is not a good thing. So now we go from step 3 to step 4, where it goes to trial. You have the hearings open to the public. The format, operating argument short, hearings are spaced out approximately 2 to 4 months, and the verdict and sentencing are typically on the same day. So in the case of somebody defaming me online, which there have been cases of that here in Korea, you're going to have to wait the 2 to 4 months for the police to do their investigation. You're going to wait 2 to 4 months for the prosecutor to do their investigation, and then it's going to be some time before you go before the judge because their docket is full, and so you're going to have to wait in line for that. You don't get to the front of the line because you're an American citizen. Talking about 4 months altogether. But you will go, and that person, the defendant, will stand before the judge, and the judge will say, hey, here's the law. They'll go over the particulars. What's your name? What's your status? What's your job? So on and so forth. They'll ask all that, and then they'll say, well, you're here on this charge of defamation or whatever crimes that are listed. And the judge will ask you, are you guilty, not guilty, or whatever. So you put in your plea, and then that's it. You're not going to get a verdict and a sentence on that day. What's going to happen is that there could be other days and other court cases where myself, as the victim, there would be another court date where the judge would take my statement, my testimony, which could be another 1, 2, 3, 4 months down the road. With the Johnny Somali thing, I think it was like 2 or 4 months, 3, 4 months down the road. So that tacks on time where the perpetrator who wronged me, supposedly, they have to stay in Korea. So they have to wait. They don't go to prison. They don't go to jail. There's no pretrial confinement for something like this. They're left on their own recognizance, but they have to stay in Korea. So then it'll come out. They'll take my statements and any other witness statements. And then what will happen after that is then you'll have another court date, which is another 2 to 4 months down the road, and where you have your verdict and sentencing. So the person that wronged me would come and have another court date. So now you're talking about, 4, 8 months, 9, 10, 11. It could be a year before you actually get to verdict and sentencing. Yeah, it's crazy. Maybe 2, 4, 6, 6 months to a year before you could have your day in court and get your verdict and get your sentencing. But if it goes to court, again, the conviction rate is 98%. So, yeah. And basically, when you step before the judge, when you make your plea of guilty or not guilty, the judge will ask your lawyer and or you if they have any evidence showing your innocence. And with the post and the video and screen captures of you saying what you did, and you don't have anything to confront that, it's pretty much cut and dried that, yeah, you have no evidence of your innocence because you're kind of like Johnny Somali. You recorded it and it's online and everybody saw it, and here's a copy of it. The police have the copy, the prosecutors have a copy because they go and verify. They just don't take your copy. They wouldn't take my copy. They're going to go and verify that you actually said those things, and they'll get copies of those things. They'll even get in touch with Facebook and make sure even if you deleted it or edited it, they will get the original copy. So yeah, that's the thing. Technology is wonderful. So anyway, yeah, it could be 6 months to a year before this would even get to the verdict stage and where you could be punished. And the punishment for defamation, for the most part, it's a fine and things like that. And, it is what it is. But I mean, verdict and sentencing are typically on the same day. And then post-sentence, this really comes to, it says cannot leave the country while serving the sentence. Punishment could be a fine. Could be forced labor if you can't pay. So kind of like community service thing that we have, prison or suspended sentence. Can convicted of multiple crimes, each one worsening the punishment. Within certain boundaries of the law. They do have some considerations for if you do multiple laws you break multiple of the same laws, there is a consideration for that, and it's not like you get 5 years for this, and so every instance is going to be 5 years. They have kind of like a reduced bit, but you're still tacking on time that you would get. So, yeah, a lot of interesting information when it comes to the criminal process. And again, you're not held in pretrial confinement, and there's other people that are experiencing this besides Johnny Somali. I remember a time when I worked in a military police company, we had soldiers that had gotten themselves in trouble. There's family members that got themselves in trouble, and then they had to serve their sentence, and they went up to, I think it was up in Chonan, there's a foreigner prison. It is the only foreigner prison in the world. So in other words, if you commit a crime as a foreigner in Korean, you don't go to a Korean prison, because if you did crimes against Koreans, the Korean prisoners would tune you up. That would be a bad thing. So they have their own foreigner prison, but they do forced labor, and prison is prison. Prison is not good. We actually ran care packages up to service members that were incarcerated in Korea because of very violent crimes, rape, murder. There was another crime where it was either a sergeant first class or a master sergeant that was smuggling in deer antlers from China through the military postal system because it doesn't get checked. And him and some other buddy, he had a buddy who worked at the embassy in China, and then he would send it to him in Korea, and then he would get it, and then he would sell it out onto the Korean black market, and they would have made a ton of money. Well, I actually talked to that guy, and it ends up that they got caught because they didn't wrap the deer antlers well enough, and it leaked, and that flagged the package, and so then they did a little sting operation. So yeah, lots of cool stuff. Crazy stuff happens when you're in Korea, and I imagine there's a ton of other retired people like me from the military or even current military that could tell you some stories that would blow your hair back. It would be crazy. So, that's what I'm saying. You got to be careful when you're talking about doing business in Korea, and when you're talking about doing these things. Anything that you do, you need to become knowledgeable of the laws of the country that you're in. Doesn't matter if it's Korea, Philippines, Thailand, Portugal, anywhere. You need to be cognizant of those laws. And when somebody comes up and says, hey, you're throwing this stuff out there, you might have the best intentions. You could have the intentions of Jesus himself, but if you don't know the laws and somebody pops up and says, hey, you might want to run this by a lawyer because there's a number of things that might be problematic, probably a real simple way in which you could, not be liable or complicit if something goes wrong, kind of like posting a disclaimer on your board. But if you automatically take offense to that and you feel that that is a personal attack, there's nothing I can do for you. In all honesty, I hope your business, Mr. Davenport, that your business rocks and kills it. I hope that you are able to do your sound studio, recording studio, and whatever else you do in every military base here in Korea, and you kill it. You retire early and you live the best life now, and even a more wonderful life as you retire. Retire early and make bank, man. That's what it's all about. Be with your family and all that. But yeah, this whole thing about being automatically dismissive and offensive to something that you posted you're basically telling people that you know everything and you don't. There are people that have been around a little bit longer than you. There's people that have more experience or education or knowledge in other areas that perhaps that you haven't been. There's retirees that I have met that are in their 70s and 80s that have done business here in Korea, and talking with them, the challenges that they face, the differences in laws in the United States and Korea when it comes to business and taxes. And holy crow, it is amazing, because that just opens up that there's so much for me to learn. But the thing is, I'm going to pass on what I learned to somebody else as they passed on information to me for somebody that's brand new. Think of it like the military. You have the old soldiers that are there that are going to pass on and train the younger soldiers so that they don't get in trouble, so that they can do their job, so that they can be successful. It is exactly the same thing, except I'm no longer in the military anymore. And if you're, a spouse of a military and you're a Korean citizen, maybe he was talking about his wife as, well, no, he said he was a spouse of a military service member. I don't know, maybe he is a Korean citizen, and that's awesome. That means that he reads, writes, and speaks Korean. So, he would have a lot easier time of reading the Korean statutes about these laws and looking them up on his own. But I'm just kind of getting the indication that he's not. When my whole intention was, hey, bro, be careful. That's all I'm saying. If I wanted to be offensive to you, I could, and you would know it. There would be a clear contrast between, hey, be careful with what you're doing with the A3 visa and Korean nationals. Put the disclaimer. Here's the laws, that might come into play. Might require you to contact a lawyer. But if I was really just going to dig into you like no tomorrow, you would know. It would be full of ad hominem attacks and so on and so forth. Personal insults for you and your family, like other people do to me. But I don't stoop that low. So, it is what it is. So, interesting stuff here. Being here in Korea and, even considering businesses, things like that. I've looked at that, but because of my current visa status, I'm not going to do a business here. But that doesn't keep me from studying the Korean laws about business. So that way, if I ever, and it'll be a few years, if I get another visa where I'm allowed to do a business like, the F513 visa, or I think it's the F6. I don't know if it's the F6. The visa laws change from time to time, or the names of the labels. But basically, I would get a 10-year visa. I think it's the F513, would allow me to do business in Korea, be a long-term visa holder. My wife eventually become a dual citizen, so, she can work here in Korea as an F4 visa holder, so it's no big problem for her either. But most people don't know this. My wife's Korean family and their extended family, they don't know anything about this. There are some that do know about Korean business law because they've had restaurants, they've had businesses, and they've run businesses for decades and so on and so forth. So, they're pretty smart on Korean business side of the house. But when you're talking about, hey, all military family members that are mostly A3 visa holders, which we talked about, you need to be careful on how you present that to Korean nationals, because you have a responsibility to keep them safe as well as the military family members. So the only thing I'm asking is just to check. And if it checks out okay, and I'm totally off base on that, I am totally fine with it. Because at least 100% without a shadow of a doubt that your lawyer says, yep, you have nothing to worry about, you're good to go. Then the worst thing that happened is you checked. But on the other side of the coin, if you didn't check with the lawyer and that one instance comes up and you get hemmed up with the Korean laws and doing illegal and promoting illegal business activities here in Korea and promoting that like those statutes said, you can't wind back the clock and you can't claim ignorance because ignorance is no defense of the law. You can't say, well, I didn't know. Well, you know now, but check with a lawyer. How hard is that? It's like, going back to the military. This is amazing. Here's what gets me. These younger generations, even some of the older ones, will take such offense to any type of help or concern because it comes against what they're doing. And it's like, It's not. It might feel like I'm against you, but it's not. I'm concerned about your well-being. It's kind of like telling a soldier, you're a sergeant and you're training your troops, and a new private comes in, and they're like, hey, they put on their Mach 4, they're doing their stuff with their rifle and stuff like this, and they're doing it obviously wrong. And there are certain safety protocols and things that you must do to keep them safe. And you point it out and say, hey, Joe, Jane, whatever it is, you probably want to check into this. You probably want to, the firearm safety rules, don't point a weapon at anything that you don't want to destroy. Make sure it's always, blah, blah, all the 4 firearm safety rules. Keep your booger hooker off the bang switch until you're ready to fire. Be wary of the target and the things that are behind it and all the others that come into play. But if I tell you those things, this situation is kind of like that. And then the brand new private turning to me and saying, how dare you? You're not supporting me. Pfft. Why would I even listen to you? You're not a private. See what I'm saying? It's the exact same thing. And how many times in the military? I don't know if Mr. Davenport was in the military or not, but if he was, I think he might have forgotten that, there's those of us out there that want to do better by people. They want to help other people for free. They want to make sure that people succeed and don't fall into the traps of A, B, C, D, and E. But some people don't want to listen. They don't want that help because they think they got it all. I got it all. I'm covered. Okay. Hopefully you do. Hopefully you will never have anything wrong happen with your business. That I'm totally for that. And that's what I pray for. And I hope you're successful. But as a person who is a business owner in the United States, multiple businesses. I had a real estate investing business. I did rehab businesses. I've rehabbed over 60 houses. I had a security business, firearms instructor. I had a business with that. Rental properties, managed properties, the whole 9 yards, flipping properties in the whole 9 yards. I've done that. I've had a portfolio of, a few $1 million in properties in Colorado way back in the day. $1 million isn't much now, but multi-million dollars worth of properties in Pueblo, and there's a lot to be learned. So don't think that because you opened up a business or because you're a spouse or because you are a Korean citizen or whatever you are, that you have all the information. Rather, the correct thing to do would be to, take that and say, you know what? I'm going to check that out. Even if the chances of it being super remote, as a prior business owner, I would say, you know what? I'm going to check that out just in case. Because of this person, they brought it up just for my own peace of mind and for the peace of mind of my wife, my family, and all that. My visa, being allowed to stay in Korea, I'm going to check it out with a lawyer. Let's see. Mark Design says, your taxes must have been a nightmare. Yes. And it got to the point where I did my own taxes. It got crazy. But eventually, I learned how to do all the taxes for all my properties. And it was just, it was insane. And then eventually I kind of backed off that. And what I ended up doing is turning it over to a management company, which made my taxes even so much easier to do. And then I actually got an accountant and a tax attorney to do those returns. So because it's getting to the point where it's so huge and keeping track of all that stuff, it's just, I'd rather pay somebody for that convenience and that peace of mind. And really that's what it comes down to, is the peace of mind of saying, you know what, I want the peace of mind. I want to have that in my life so that I can focus on my business. So I don't know why somebody would not want to check on these things, the legalities that I pointed out with the Korean law and statutes and promoting illegal business practices, visa holders doing with Koreans and the whole 9 yards. For me personally, I would be jumping on that. I would have removed that post. I would have edited it in some way, shape, or form to say, you know what, let's put a disclaimer, and I'm going to go talk to a lawyer and see what the lawyer says in regards to this, just so everything's above board. And if the lawyer gives you a thumbs up, then run with it. Because now you have a defense by saying that you checked with a lawyer and you have the documentation, the email, whatever it is, you have that on record of saying that, no, you are good to go. That gives you the peace of mind. But to automatically be offended that somebody suggests that there might be a possibility that you could be liable in some things that could go bad, I don't get that. I really don't get that at all. So anyway, that's what we got going on. Retired in Korea, doing business in Korea. Which brings up the question, will I ever do business in Korea? When my visa changes, there's a possibility that I will. But I really enjoy being retired, so probably not. Just very, very problematic on, it's to the point I don't have to work. So, I mean, I do my hobbies and I print stuff and paint and all this stuff. I have a great time with that, laser engrave and all that. The hobbies that I do, and of course, that's not even talking about the books I'm writing and stuff like that. Exercise and physiology and things based on studies and research, meta-analysis and all that, which I'm sure would bore people to death. But yeah, it's just some things I do, and then the other things that I do is become knowledgeable on the laws of the country that I'm living in. And for the people that aren't knowledgeable, I try to help them out with that. But if there's some people that you lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, and it's not on me. I did my part, And I just pray that nothing bad ever happens to them. So, it is what it is. I would say probably 98%, maybe 99%, probably nothing's going to happen to this Mr. Davenport guy. But then, it's not the 98%. It's the one time. And, what is it? What is the cost of contacting a lawyer and double checking? I don't know. I've talked with some real estate lawyers here in Korea, and there's some things that I asked, and they didn't charge, when we were buying property, because that was, we had done business and so on and so forth. Oh, yeah, don't worry about this and this. Yeah, we got this covered. Or this is how this works here in Korea versus the United States. And so, yeah, it's a non-issue. Don't worry about it. And it gave me peace of mind. So just go get your peace of mind. Check. It never hurts to check. But if it does hurt, you can't go back in time and uncheck and get a redo. So do over, that's not how it works in life, unfortunately. We don't have time machines yet. So until then, just check and make sure and see what it is from there. So with that being said, maybe we'll dig more into business. And I don't know, maybe not, because I'm so focused on doing so many other things. But again, once something catches my eye and I want to become more knowledgeable in it, like exercise or nutrition, taking courses in that, 3D printing, resin printing, FDM printing, whatever it is, painting, writing books and how do you write a good book, I jump all in on that. So it just depends on whether I get hooked or not. So we'll see. I'm not going to make any promises because I got a busy life as being a retiree. So I enjoy it. So anyway, that's going to be it. The last thing that I would ask for all of you that are hanging and watching, if you would please like and subscribe to the channel, I would really appreciate that. That would be a solid. It would help me out. Eventually, I'm going to monetize my YouTube channel. One of these days, it's on the list of things to do on my bucket list. But with that being said, if you want to contact me, there is my email address, officialthevariedlife@gmail.com. And you can buy me coffee if you want to do that too. If you don't, that's cool. I buy other people coffee. And the scrolling ticker down here, those are people that have bought me coffee, and I have much respect. And you can be one of those too as well. And we end up, Hannah says, hello from Seattle. Alrighty, hello. Good to see a mental health journey. Very important to have good mental health, Got to have it. Because if you don't, that can just multiply your problems by 100. So make sure you get good mental health help and learn how to deal with stress. I've learned that, and it's been a lifesaver. So with that, I'll let everybody go. Thanks for watching. I appreciate that. And even though some of my commentary was tongue-in-cheek, and even though I've been a little bit sarcastic at times, generally the whole point is to help people that are here in Korea or coming to Korea, or people that are kind of like us, my wife and I, Americans that are trying to retire here in Korea, and there's a way that you can do that with the F4 and F1 visa. So, Hannah says, thank you. Me and my husband are fans of you. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. You guys are awesome. And there it is. So be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video. And it probably won't be anything like this. It'll probably be something more upbeat and fun. So, stick around for that. We'll see you on the next video. All right, peace. Good stuff.